by George to order. The call to order. Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty. Welcome to the July meeting of Tampa Historic Streetcar, Inc. First item of business is approval of minutes. Assuming you've all read them in detail, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Public input. Is there anyone from the general public who would like to be heard? Seeing none, I'll move along to the streetcar system report. Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon. For the month of June, we delivered 99.97% of our trips, and our on-time performance was 100%. We had 4 incidents, all relatively minor. I will refer to Colin. We had a car bump a pallet in the shop. That motorman has been relieved of duty since then. And we had an accident at Channel Side where we hit a motorist that ran a stoplight. Another one was a trolley pole that got bent by putting on the wrong wire. That motorman's been retrained, and we're looking at some other options to kind of reinforce that so it doesn't happen in the future. And finally, we had a car struck by lightning, which was kind of a new experience for me.
Welcome to Tampa.
Yeah. All of our inspections and everything are up to date. And the only thing that's not on the report that I'd like to report is that we're well along with the Flamingo install on the cars. 6 cars are complete, and we have 4 yet to do, and there's already cabling run in a few of those cars.
That's great.
So, and I believe they want to use the streetcar as the pilot for that, so we're
That's
pretty
great.
excited about that.
Out of curiosity, what exactly happened when the streetcar was hit by lightning?
It blew a coil in the line breaker.
That's it?
That was it. So.
No quick surprise for the riders or anything?
No, I guess, that it runs on high voltage DC, and that's all lightning really is, so the car kind of protected itself. So
Good. That's great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Dr. Robinson.
Can I follow up on that?
Yeah.
Did that happen while the streetcar was on the line in use with passengers
Yes,
when it
sir.
got hit by lightning?
Wow.
So we're
But that
lightning
was
proof.
one heck of a bang when it hit. Wow.
I didn't get any feedback from the passengers on that one.
Okay, I was just curious. That's wow.
Legal and legislative report. In Mr. Smoker's absence, you are.
Clay Matthews.
Mr. Matthews, do you have any report for us today?
The only report I did have was that the Elevate, that they would be getting back to you guys on the Elevate Inc. contract, but I guess it's my understanding that that contract is now is
Yeah,
complete.
it expired in June anyway, so we outlived the controversy of the discussion, which was better actually.
Okay.
So please let Dave know that.
I'll forward that message.
Okay, Chair's report. Mickey and Abby and I, with expert help from the HART staff, I want to thank you very much for all the presentations you made, and please thank your missing head of streetcar operations, former acting head of streetcar operations. You guys were great, and we met in front of the Downtown Sierra Advisory Committee, who were very enthusiastic about giving us not only the $150,000 that we normally receive, but the extra 50. We pitched an extra 50 from each district, and they were great. And of course, Abby's on that board, but she tried to stay quiet, but couldn't entirely. But they were nice, and there were a number of people on that board that really would have, given us more if we'd asked and said so. Then a couple days later, and all 3 of us sort of had a chance to back Mrs. Burkhardt up, and then we a couple nights later appeared before the Channel District CAC, and someone had said maybe they would be a little snarky, but It's quite the contrary. They were very excited, and they wanted to give us $500,000. And the CRA manager, Mr. Suarez, good to see you.
Good to see you.
The CRA manager kind of quieted that down a little bit, but the long and short was that they also agreed to give us an extra $50,000. Both boards asked that we come back to their August meetings and with a little game plan and some expectations about how we might use this money to offset ridership, the fare box for special events, for weekends, our CEO had a lot of ideas, and I think the whole staff has probably a lot of ideas. So we're going to put that money in a special fund if it happens that we receive it all, and we're going to track it carefully, what we do with it, how much extra ridership it projects, and report that to them quarterly on that. So the EBOR YCDC is next week. I'll be out of state, but Mickey is going to come, and I assume you will be, right? Good.
I'll be there as well.
And you'll be there as well. So we'll be well represented, and we believe we also have support from the YCDC. We haven't had a chance to formally ask, but
No pressure.
Yeah. If I may, Mr. Chair, as you know, I'm the chair of the Ybor City Development Corporation Board this term, and it's running out in October. So this will be my last presentation as chair. We've had some preliminary discussions about this, and we've already done our budget for the coming year. So we'll need to figure out a way to manipulate some of the things that we've already allocated funds for, if we're able to make that request. The board, I think, is supportive, particularly seeing that it involves extra service and special types of things that will help us out.
Yes.
In all of the three CRAs. I think the concern is going to be where we're going to get the money from,
Sure.
based on our projects that we've already implemented and that we're working on implementing
Right.
for the funds available. So. Not that I would like for you to go back to those CRAs that have graciously offered additional funds, but I'd like for you, if you could, to keep that in your back pockets, that if for some reason we cannot come up with the full amount of the request, that maybe that balance can come from one of the other two CRAs.
Sure.
But we are excited about the opportunity to do some new and different things and to expand service and to get more ridership back and forth throughout the three CRAs.
That's great. Thank you. They did ask, by the way, what it would really cost for morning service and what it would really cost for to reduce the headways, which was a big issue in the Channel District. And so you and then Ruthie and I talked a little bit. I think we should go, when we go back in August, we should really tell them what it would cost, particularly the Channel District, which just, if they're that generous, again, we'll see. But it was just amazing. I've never really... And I, of course, insulted the port. The meeting was at the port building, and I insulted the Port Authority for letting us be in this beautiful building, but could not be bothered to contribute to the operation of the streetcar. And the guy who was most, encouraging about giving us extra money works for the Port Authority. So I played right into his hand, I guess.
Well, after today's meeting at the port, in which there were $900,000 of expenses on credit cards, for things like Burns Steakhouse and bottles of wine and stuff like that, you may have a little bit of a better place to go. It's like $900,000 would have taken care of our budget for about 9 months out of the year. It would have been great to have, and we could have provided service for quite a few amount of hours.
And if we just had the 150 that they had been in the practice of giving us every year, and including this year, would go a long way. And I don't know. I mean, I've said this publicly, and I've said it in front of Bob. The mayor could have it like that, and we've tried many times to appeal to the current CEO at the port and the port board and Commissioner Berman, and nothing. And there's no reason for it. As far as I know, they're still the single largest property owner along the line.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we were asked about Mr. Vinnick. Well, Mr. Vinnick, as a private property owner, isn't required to make a big contribution to the streetcar. My guess is that were it not for Mr. Vinnick, we wouldn't be talking about an extension anyway. So I think that his day will come when he wants to be more involved in the streetcar and financially in other ways, but I don't feel it's appropriate to treat him the same way we treat the port and the 3 CRAs.
Right, I agree with that. I think with Mr. Vinnick and his organization and SPP, Mr. Vinnick has now become, I think, a stanchion of the business community stance on transportation, and he's putting in some pretty good sweat equity for all of us with that, in particular. And his comments in the last week I thought were interesting, but and I think that you have to remember in their master plan that they're doing for the property around SBP, the streetcar is still an integral part of how that will operate as a new well district. And so I think that beyond the contribution part, their plans for how they want to integrate the streetcar into what they're doing, I think, is pretty robust, and I'm excited to see how that evolves with that. So, and we're, in full disclosure, my firm is working on this section in front of Channelside Bay Plaza, enhancing all of that for safety, for pedestrian experience, for the streetcar. So it's pretty exciting right now what's going on there. So I think the streetcar factors in very strongly in what they're doing. The other observation I made, having gone to these CAC meetings, was that the Channel District CAC in particular was very adamant about their feelings that in order for the streetcar to be successful, we have to invest in the streetcar. I think was the message that they brought in telling us that the investment we asked for is great, but that we need to start looking in the future at really ramping up that investment and to double, they were talking about, maybe more than what we ask now. And their feelings are that the more we invest, the better it will be for their neighborhood. I think the headways are, and the reliability is a big issue there, but their feeling is that in order to accomplish that, there has to be an investment made in order for it to run the way we want it to run, and once we do that, they think the results will be pretty robust. I don't know if you have anything to add, Abby, to that, but that's what really struck me, is their attitude of investment is the key element in making it work.
I would absolutely agree with that statement, and I think to their point, it wasn't like, oh, let's just give you money to give you money, or take the load off someone else. It was absolutely about, we have expectations, we want these certain things done, you've done what you said you're going to do for the last 2 years, and we see you continuing to make those strides. So they were really hoping for 10-minute headways. I think if we can put together a plan, okay, it's clear the city is not ready to make that investment this year, but we don't see this amount going down that the CACs are receiving, so maybe a next year thing. I think the important thing for the CACs is that they see that we are listening to them. They asked to know what the numbers are, and we need to provide it to them, even if we can't fulfill that request right now of 10-minute headways. Just that we show that we're listening. And then I thought it was very interesting. So they loved the idea of the 10-minute headways. Okay, so maybe we show them 15-minute as well, but they're somewhere in between. And the morning service, if it could be something more consistent and reliable that they could have long term, they would be able to use it more. I also felt strongly about if we do the incentives of free rides, that it be geared towards the residents, not just special events. So they felt that the residents need to have that reoccurring use in order to make it a more long-term thing for them to ride.
We also met, Ruthie and I met with the Downtown Property Owner Management Association, all the property managers, representing all the big buildings in downtown. And, I'm always a little, I approach that luncheon with trepidation because they've been paying the bulk of the special assessment with not a lot of service. And so we talked a lot about the extension and how important that is. And the people who own these big buildings need to speak to members of the city council and the mayor about, let's get this thing extended north. And they're excited about the property. There are 45 or 50,000 people working in downtown, and there should be more of them using the streetcar than there are. So we're going to work with, through the Downtown Partnership, Linda Remund, who's the Special Assessment Manager for the Downtown Partnership, and try and find more ways to get those 20 ride passes into people's hands. And it was all very positive. It's been a very positive week. And I'm sure YCDC will be too. We knew going in that your fund balance isn't quite as high as others, and so we knew it would be tighter for you all, but we'll hope for the best.
Michael Kennedy, I had a good discussion with the partnership this morning, even about potential sources from them.
From the Downtown Partnership?
From the Downtown Partnership. Maybe even help from Karen Kress with getting grants. She's great. I mean, she probably requires the lowest budget of all the departments at the partnership because she's so great at getting those grants.
She's a
so
star.
I don't know that. I'm sure if they exist, you guys get
Well,
them.
while we were talking, dropped a message to DOT and saying, hey, what is there for streetcar operations or pilot programs? Because we've been able to use DOT funding to pay for our taxi voucher program, the first $150,000. They're paying for half the flight service. If there's a way that we can pitch this, then let's find that and go for some of those. Because the delta between what we're running now and this really cool service schedule of, starting at 7 a.m. and doing a 10-minute peak and a 15-minute base, so 7 to 10 at 10 minutes and 15 minutes till 4 to 6 at 10 minutes and then running till midnight and having better service on the weekends, the difference is $1 million. Big number, but we're talking a $1.6 million operating budget. So if each CRA put in $50,000 this year, well, now we're not talking $1 million, now we're talking $850,000. And so what can DOT pick up and what can be picked up where? And then we start thinking about it differently. And not to say the CRA should have to do more, but let's say the CRAs did say, well, we'll double that, we'll do this, we'll do that. Then that narrows it, and then there's skin in the game from the folks supporting this. Plus, if the ad valorem projections are to be believed, then there'll be more coming in, right, from the assessments, which I think is a point on the Vinnick investment, too. Downtown will be worth a lot more per square footage. It's already the most lucrative part of the county for ad valorem, but they'll be generating more revenue here for the streetcar to operate. But the difference is $1 million between what we have now and a really great schedule. And if we keep our perspective on that, let's not think about doubling, let's not think about that. It's the downtowner, I think, was $800,000 its first year. There were a lot of non-recurring grants, a lot of one-time only good deals. But if the downtowner is going to go, for instance, into a free thing, are there some funding sources that might have been out there that can be allocated over? And how creative can we get? So we'll start with our friends at DOT and say, hey, what about this? And is it a good faith effort? And what do we have to pitch? It's a pilot program that you cover for a while, but it's about fun going through that. But I'll shush to my report.
Well, it is exactly time for your report.
Well, then there we go. I'll make it easier. Thank you, Mr. President. We had a couple of numbers that Ruthie Reyes shared back with us, but I have the email and I don't know if you do. So, for example, thanks for this board to consider, because we may not meet with you before the CRAs are scheduled again. So this is your time to tell us what we should be pitching. Going free on every Friday through the year would be about $120,000 to make every Friday free for the entire day. It wouldn't be resident specific, but we could always look at something like the last Friday is free, and then we're going to need an ID card for anybody that is going to try to get the free fare, because it's not going to work for our operators. Our motormen have to read driver's licenses, et cetera, et cetera. But if folks are amenable to having a card that identifies them as a resident or worker in downtown, we could investigate letting them ride free, Final Fridays free, just what are the logistics involved. We'll keep looking at that. We could run 2 hours additional service on every Sunday for $30,000. For special events, for $30,000, we could cover 60 more special events throughout the year. We had some sample of events popping up. So we'll price out what reduced headways would look like in a window that makes sense for us. So within the current schedule, again, we had the issue that starting early in the morning had a lot of extra costs packed on, but maybe it's maybe Fridays aren't free, but we take them and Saturdays to 15 minutes. So I make myself a note, Friday, Saturday at 15 minutes. And maybe it's 15 minutes in the morning and then it goes to 10 minutes in a window. So let us see what we can do that would land a couple of packages at $120 to $150. We'll do that. So it'll be a combination of free Fridays or this, special events or that, improved headways or this, so on and so forth. And let us get some options that we can bring back. And clearly we can't email them out because of sunshine, but we'll have based on our information from here, maybe 3 or 4 options we can take back to the CRAs and get their sense of it, and then bring it back to the THS board for final votes and consideration.
I think it's great to, if you don't mind, I think it's great to say what we can do with that allocation, but also I think it's really important they want to see the grand slam of it too. Like, if we had the dreamboat scenario, which you talked about for years, what that would look like.
Well, it's helpful to
and
put
what
on
that
the
would
slide
cost.
again, so it's not just me saying, by the way, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I mean, you're right, we've been talking about it for a while, but what can we flesh out with like a little bit more of a marketing perspective behind
Yeah,
it?
just to kind of give them the visual that.
And poor Ruthie, this is all your homework, so I'll take notes, but there you go. Perfect. So, okay, so we can say what this will purchase now and where you could go. And again, $1 million is the big kahuna. And here are some baby steps, and it may be that we continue to be in baby steps until the Vinnick properties are generating more revenue, but let's be aggressive and show that we're doing something so we never again have to answer the why isn't there a business plan for growing ridership? We'll be doing stuff. We'll be acting on that. And that is the entirety of my presentation, Mr. President.
That's your entire report? Wow.
Unless you'd like me just to keep talking.
No, I
Thank
mean, I know
you.
you could do that.
I could, as my mother will tell you.
May I add?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I think going back to some of your comments, Abby, just while I'm thinking about it before I forget, I think working with the downtown partnership will be key because the downtowner now, as its success grows, as we're adding a few more vehicles, that will make the service a little more robust and more efficient with the types of vehicles we're having. I think there's discussion amongst us who've been involved with it about partnering with the Streetcar to use the analytics of the app of the Streetcar so that if you're riding the Streetcar and let's say you go from here to downtown and you get off at the Poe Garage or the Whitey Street Garage, you can call the downtowner through the apps to be waiting there for you. So it becomes a first mile, last mile kind of similar thing, but it keeps your ride consistent and takes you to where you want to go. So utilizing the downtowner as part of that system, I think, is a great opportunity for us to expand the service, whether you do it anywhere down the line that the downtowner is allowed to go. And have that commitment of some way. We want to look at different ways to utilize it beyond just what we're doing now with that. How do we expand the reach of it? How do we expand the perception of its ability to really service in a much more effective manner?
Director Jacob, our ITS staff works very closely with Google. We were one of the first properties in the state of Florida to make our Google data open. So let's speak to Shannon Haney on Ruthie Reyes Burkhart staff. Might be able to have an introduction because in other cities the Google Trip Planner will say here's all your bus options, but here's your Uber. If Downtowner can get folded into that might be an option for you too, and it's free if they bring that on. So I think we can see if Shannon can provide an introduction or help out with that.
Cool.
And one other thing too, Catherine, on the we were talking about having some kind of identification card or something for people that are downtown residents or part of that program. Is there should be a way that we can have a some kind of card reader or something like that we can swipe onto the Streetcar, connected to maybe a mobile device that you can use. Now, I don't know because there's a lot of those things out there.
Up and running that is something for us, and I'm looking at Jeff, so he'll take notes on this too. That's something that we could potentially code that. If whatever bucket you're in, that with Flamingo, you get free fare on the Streetcar, whether it's your smart card
right.
or there's some level of code that you have from your building, I don't know. But we might be, when Flamingo's live, we'll have a lot more options to do that. That if I'm, Jeff Zampatella and I'm a resident there, that I've got a code I plug into Flamingo, and then every time I scan my phone, I get to ride for free. So we'd be talking the delta between now and the spring when Flamingo goes live, and then however we could plug it in there.
Yeah, because
that's a great point. We would have a lot more options.
Because I think the key is that being able to, as Mr. Jacob just mentioned, is that you're measuring what those trips are. We're very fortunate through the Downtown Partnership and the Downtowner that we have very specific information on the riders, where they're picked up, what times they're picked up, how many people are going from one particular part of the Downtowner reach to the other part. It's just a phenomenal thing that we don't do at this level. Now, it's a little bit different because it's an on-call app as opposed to it being a static transit system. But I think that we need to do more of that in order to track where people are coming from in order to ride the streetcar and be able to figure out and connect it into that first mile, last mile. Because I think that that's really our missing piece for all of it. Not from want of trying, we just haven't had really
Good data set.
not only data set, but we really haven't had any of the dollars to do some of the other stuff. We're still trying to put wheels on buses. You know that. And when we look at our budget on HART, it's very tough to try and figure out, all right, let's do some real good pie in the sky stuff. It just doesn't work that way because we need to figure everything else out.
Speaking of budget, I did want to note, if you have seen some of the stories in the Times or St. Peter's blog, you're aware that we're doing a very different approach to our budget and our service footprint here at HART. However, we are the operator of Streetcar. Since we are not funding Streetcar, those considerations do not come over. So Streetcar, the budget that you see today will be pretty much the budget from last year, and service will remain constant. And your indirect employees, the motormen and the maintenance folks downstairs, are very happy with that information.
They're all staying. So
Yeah.
There will be no diminishment of service there. So
Good.
we stopped downstairs maybe a month or two ago, and they just appreciated hearing that.
I'll bet they did.
They said, "I'm so glad I came over from bus." So there was a little bit of that. But yes, so the budget changes that we are looking at will not impact Streetcar.
Well, I hope everything sorts itself out for HART.
It will. We have an excellent team, so we will have excellent solutions.
Mr. Rosenstock, the Lori Gage report, please. Nothing? What does that mean, nothing?
Oh, she ditched us.
She ditched us?
Just
She made us no money. Okay, let's go to the Jeff Seward fiscal year 2018 HART DHS budget update.
Good afternoon, Board. Cindy Zambella, for the record, Budget and Grants Manager for HART. Today before you is the proposed FY18 budget.
She's not hitting the mic.
Was this the microphone?
This is essentially the same budget that you saw back in May. We're bringing it back to you to give you a little more in-depth information, some of which President English and I have discussed. So he's probably much more familiar with the weeds than I'll go into detail here. These details you did see in May. As Ms. Egan alluded to, our level of service will remain essentially constant to what we are providing today. Some of the highlights here is we are estimating a slight increase in ridership over both FY16 and FY17. Even with the pilot, we're estimating a slight increase in ridership to 300,000 rides. Some innovative technology that is being proposed, as you've heard, Flamingo. We expect that will be up and running sometime in FY18. Streetcar Wi-Fi is being installed as we speak. We're looking at some other revenue-generating opportunities and potentially having ATM at the 11 streetcar stations to hopefully supplement our revenue sources there. Again, service levels are constant to what we are providing today, pending any increase in revenues based on the dialogue that you all have had this morning or this afternoon with potential increase in the CRA assessments. Very busy slide. This is a roll-up of both HART budget and also the THS budget. Again, it's very busy, but it does show all of the operating revenue sources as well as the categories of expenses broken down for you there. Again, essentially flat to FY17. THS operating budget includes the contribution that is made to HART, and as you can see, again, we're not proposing anything different than what we came to you back in May. This corporate slide, though, is the slide I want to focus on. That does demonstrate that there was about a $66,000 increase in the non-ad valorem assessment for the CRAs, that's on the first line there. You can see that increased. They're also, City of Tampa is also increasing or expecting to increase the other revenues that they're projecting. Those include leasing, car leasing, advertising, any interest income that comes directly to them. And based on expenses that they are also projecting, including what they need to provide to HART for us to balance our budget, there will be a reduction in what the City of Tampa will need to contribute in order to balance the budget. TH board expenses, again, projected by the City of Tampa, effectually flat to FY 17. You've seen the operating statistics. I mentioned that the ridership increase will be slightly over FY 16 actuals. The cost per revenue hour or the cost per service hour is the way in which we get reimbursed from the City of Tampa. So any additional non-ad valorem that they would realize from these CRAs would be billed to the City of Tampa at that rate for any additional service. So that's how we would capture that additional revenue.
That's a big increase per hour. What's driven that, Cindy?
Cost per service hour is a derivative of both the hours of operation and the operating expenses, and it's just a formula equation. So based on, again, how many hours we're operating and how much it costs to operate that would be the cost per revenue hour.
That's kind of a black box answer.
Well, and let us look at it, Mr. President. I believe starting back in 14-15, we began capitalizing a lot of our maintenance because we came to midlife service on many of our cars. So that was a big effort for us in 14 and 15 in dropping out that cost. We took out, for instance, Mr. Mikos' salary, but we were able to transfer a lot of our operating expense into capitalized maintenance, and I believe we've achieved most of that maintenance. So things that we were able to bill against different grants, the well has run dry, so we're probably now at a truer list of what the expenses would be, but we'll double check on that.
Yeah, I'd really like an answer because that's $12, $13 an hour. That's a lot.
Well, and if we had been accelerating from 2014 at a constant rate, going from 125 to 130, 135,
that would be even higher. Right?
Yeah, then we will. If it had been $5 an hour from there, we'd say, "Okay, that's great." But it became so inexpensive in 15 and 16 when we were capitalizing maintenance. It looks worse than it is. So the capitalizing of maintenance should have bought us about 3 years because it was such extensive work to do on all the cars. But we'll double check and make sure that we're not still capitalizing and something else happened. So we'll double check.
Okay, just lost
thank
my
you.
presentation here.
It's a good one. President.
I want to get back to the slide.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, I brought this slide back up only because to demonstrate President English, we can go over this, of course, much more in depth, but looking at the expenses in 16, which is the comparison that we're using for the cost per revenue hour, our expenses were almost 1.6 million, where we're proposing 1.8 million. So we can look at each of the categories of expenses to determine the difference. But if you look at the most glaring difference would be in the salaries and wages. So again, we can look at what that's being attributed to, but that would be a category that's driving the cost of service per hour.
When we did adopt the new ATU contract, it was effective into 17.
It was.
Which would have been an average 3% raise, but a retro. So that's another good thing for us to tease out. Thank you, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not to mention parts and supplies went up another. It was like $45,000 in addition to the I guess it was the $140,000 that you were talking about concerning salaries. So that was a double hit on it.
I asked Cindy to show me the split marketing out from the other administrative contract services, or however it was grouped. And I'm glad, because it shows that we're going to spend more money on marketing in this coming year than we are now. That's the number from which we spend, Steve. That's the number. That's our marketing budget, basically. So when we're giving away free stuff, some of it comes out of this account. Okay. And Cindy, you'll be able to isolate. Let's say that we get an extra $150,000 from the CRAs. There's a place to put that where we can keep track of it, and you can keep track of it and report to us on a regular basis what we're spending it on and how much is left, so we know.
Yes, we'll be able to do that.
Okay.
Sure. So that is a good segue into this last slide, which is the scenario that we've been talking about. Essentially, there were two recommendations from the last meeting, one of which was to use some of the endowment, which we have decided that based on keeping a certain reserve of 90 days into that streetcar fund balance, that was not really a viable option. But we do have the scenario before you for the $150,000 from the CRAs. And essentially what that would do is just increase the contribution that was collected to HART from the city of Tampa. It would increase our expenses as well, obviously, because we would be putting more service on the street. So with the expectation that is going to be talked about in the next month, we don't have a budget for you to adopt today, but we will come back to you in August with a recommended budget for you to adopt, pending any conversations that you have and solidifying whether or not we'll be getting the additional $150,000 assessment. That's all I have.
Thanks. Any other questions? Very nice presentation. Thank you, Cindy.
And we did have an update from Jeff Stewart about our ATM partnership.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Jeff Stewart, Chief Financial Officer. We have signed an agreement with ACFN, and it is their responsibility to do the permitting with the city of Tampa.
Ours? Yours?
No, the vendors.
Right.
But we are assisting them in attending the meetings.
Is that going okay?
It is not going okay, but I have faith that we will have a second meeting and it will be much more productive. There are requests for information such as estimated revenue, a copy of the agreement, which are all irrelevant, in our opinion, to the permitting process. But it is the vendor's responsibility, but we will continue to meet with the city, and I am looking for a positive resolution to move forward. We may have to do some new surveys, but we will figure that out, and it may end up being costs incurred actually by the vendor instead of HART or THS. So I'm hoping that at the August meeting where we will present you the budget for adoption, we will actually have an estimate of revenue for the year and a time frame of installation and moving forward with hopefully all of the ATMs. But I will keep the CEO abreast and keep you abreast if we have any issues with this process.
Thank you. We really did go to the Tampa City Council. Charlie would be the only councilman who would have been on then and still on now, of course, but we got it was either a zoning approval or a variance or something. We got an official approval from the Tampa City Council to put electronic kiosks at every station. Essentially, that's all this is, except money spits out of it. But that approval may be lost in the archives or in the ozone someplace. But truthfully, that approval is someplace in the city records because it's only been. Well, it's probably been 12, 13 years.
It predates me coming here, but I remember discussions for the new Whiting Street station did include info kiosks because there was a caveat that it could not be distracting to the street. I remember that. So pre-2010. So do keep me posted because I could at least go try and find that dusty box someplace.
Well, they'll have some kind. If you remember when the date was, we can just check it up on
We could probably find that out.
Yeah.
God, I don't know.
Listen, I laugh because we still have some land use hearing information on index cards from the 1940s. So don't feel bad as if they're sliding you. Okay?
I
just
don't
want to
know.
point that out to you.
And I know darn well there's somebody in the city administration a bunch of them who are here, there, then, and here now who remember. I just have to go dig it out.
Well, Charlie has a prodigious memory, so
Does he?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Especially if you slighted him in some way, he would definitely remember.
No, I've never saw it. No,
Okay. Well, too bad, because that would be an easier way of finding it out.
Always been pretty careful with Mr. Miranda. But let me know if you have a problem.
Will. Thank you.
Please. Thanks. Because that's what, $40,000-$50,000 a year in income, I think.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
Good. Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Compliance reports. Anyone want to hear about marketing? Do you have a report? It bears reporting? Nope. Ridership, fares, special, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. Financial statements, they're in your report. Any old business? Any new business? Did you want to mention Polar Express?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You have a few minutes. Thank you. So I met with the Downtown Partnership, Sean Drinker, this morning about the Winter Village Express. Last year, I'm sure most of you attended the ice skating rink and their pop-up shops and the restaurants and bars that they had on location. And at the downtown CRA-CAC meeting, one of the members recommended that we try to incorporate something that would tie the streetcar in and create somewhat of a Polar Express. And so Sean took that back to his desk and did a ton of research and came up with some ideas on moving that forward. He met with both of you, Ms. Egan and...
Good conversation.
Okay. And so then he asked to meet with me this morning to kind of tie a few things in. So time frame-wise, it would be November 17th to January 7th. So approximately 7 or 8 weeks. And they were thinking they wanted to do like a dedicated streetcar, decorated, branded, have some carolers. It's very similar to an event that takes place in Parrish that sells out in 4 days. It is a similar timeline as well, but their tickets cost $50 each. And literally, if you don't get your tickets within 4 days of it going on sale, you don't get to go. So they're hoping to do some kind of a pre-sale. If we all came to an agreement and it sounded like a good path forward, the partnership is ready to step up and take it on. Obviously, there would be a lot of work on staff here too, but we were just kind of fleshing out some ideas. So some things I recommended. They were thinking like a 4 to 8 time frame. I think sometimes, and maybe 4 days of the week. Maybe it's more of a 2 or 3 day a week. There's a lot of details that we could get into, but I just wanted to find out if we thought that was a good idea or something that we should be working towards for this year.
Sounds neat.
I also asked about profits and who would be receiving those, right? Like, is this a fundraiser for the streetcar?
Right, or a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a fundraiser for the streetcar, but I've talked to Sean too about it. The thing in Parrish is Old Train and it's 13 miles, so it's a pretty nice ride. But we could decorate a streetcar, which we've done before anyway, and there's kind of a program of what happens on the car. It's fun, and there's a Santa. It could on the Ybor end, perhaps the Ybor Museum must be some wonderful Latin Christmas traditions that parents and their children would enjoy, that they could spend a half an hour doing on the Ybor end, and then Winter Village on the downtown end, and it would run and people would pay to be on it, and it would be fun. One question would be, how would you get people from the Whiting Station to Curtis Hickson Park? It's a little bit of a hike for a lot of people. That hasn't been sorted out, the days of the week, but I think that it might be an interesting opportunity to add a fourth car and figure out how to have somebody else help us pay for that, and maybe we could make a contribution as well. So Catherine thought it was an interesting idea, and now Abby thinks it's an interesting idea. So I think it probably is an interesting idea.
Mickey thinks it's an interesting
And Mickey
idea.
thinks it's Mickey, by the way, is the new chairman of the Tampa Downtown Partnership, so he's involved in everything on both ends now.
So I am, and just to add to that, our discussions is how do we tie it all together in a real positive way so everybody benefits from the Ybor end to the downtown end, and make it some kind of connection to Winter Village. The cool thing about Winter Village this year is that we're getting 2 additional weeks as compared to the initial last year, because if you all remember, we had to tear it down early last year because of the need of the park for the national championship activities. So we're going to get those 2 weeks back in the middle of the Christmas holidays, which we think will be extremely robust with both attendance and potential of revenue coming in from the village that we have there and the retail sales and the food and beverage sales. So being able to do something like this to tie it in is really exciting. It expands the Winter Village concept, and we're pretty optimistic that we think it can help us first get the public awareness for it, and secondly, help people get back and forth in a unique way that we didn't do before. So I think it's exciting. It's going to be a fun thing to kind of plan and see how it turns out.
Excellent.
And we had left it with the Downtown Partnership would send over a notice, and we would start doing some meetings for logistics. So we will keep you posted.
Yeah, they were going to talk to YCDC, and I hope either the chamber or the museum.
How about if we use the rubber wheel trolley to transport them to the...
We had this conversation that we could do, because we brand a trolley every Christmas anyhow.
Yeah.
It's decorated, we do parades with it.
That's a good idea.
Can you cover the tinsel trolley?
Well, and the city of Tampa generously covers that trolley.
Exactly.
There
So
we go.
we might as well do that.
Yep,
And,
and that we could look at some kind of insert trip or blah, 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 so we just let us do our bureaucracy thing, but we could meet at Whiting Station and go up and do a loop of Curtis Hickson.
Yeah.
Then the kids don't have to walk, and even more transit stuff. And
It could, and one of the concepts we thought about this morning was we could use the trolley for the whole trip, but it would depend on I can't recall the difference in the number of seats and how many it can hold, but if you ran it along the streetcar line, and then it would visually show everyone what the extension would look like up to Curtis Hickson.
we could do that. We have a charter problem with that. We don't have a charter with the streetcar because we don't have to share those rails with anybody. They are your streetcars. So there's not charter competition for something that would be special use like that. Mm-hmm. We have FTA rules, which will complicate it. So we can do a couple of little things, but to do the entire run would be a great idea, but probably not going to happen for us this year.
Okay.
But the vision is great and fantastic, and thank you.
We'll work on it.
Any other business, ladies and gentlemen? If not, thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
How you doing?